hearing different things about what was happening in Kula. I'm so glad that we came up here this morning because I don't think anyone's description can do justice, even just the portions that we've seen, knowing there's a whole lot more that we haven't seen, and being able to just talk to some of the local residents who are helping us share what this community really needs.
Summer.
I'm Kelsey.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Nice
I
to
figured,
meet
yeah,
you.
you're recognizable.
Yeah,
face,
no, this is just like, you know, I represented Maui for 8 years in Congress, and my heart has just been breaking, and nobody's talking about it.
Yeah, that's what a lot of my neighbors and people are saying in the community. Like, you know, we don't hear about it. Like, we try to look. They had no clue. Like, this was pretty intense. They're like, until they came up here and they're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
When we left our home, the police told us to leave because the fire had came over already. And then when we came up, like maybe 23 minutes later, went down to our church, Waipuna Chapel at the bottom, like a meeting place, to get our last vehicle. This already was in flames, and we're like right there. So we kind of was like, okay, I don't think our house is gonna be there. We're back, just kind of ready.
It's so crazy how the fire moves.
I know. My friend, my neighbor sent me a video of how it looked like my house and then the fire that was next to my house.
Yeah.
That's my house.
I want your guys' story to be told, and while, you know, it's impossible to capture the devastation in Lahaina, there are also other communities here who have experienced that same kind of loss.
Yeah, and there's a lot of trauma. Like, I know for the ones that lost everything, it's just a long healing process because it just levels of it.
You can read the house, you know,
Exactly.
all the loss of everything, the memories and just everything else is impossible to repair.
Relationships later on as they go through this process is a lot. So definitely.
Well, you know, we're here for you guys, and you know, not only in the short term but the long term.
And they cannot only concentrate about Lahaina, Kelsey. It's not only about Lahaina.
Exactly.
It's about the people up here.
That's why we're here, to help shine a light on what's happening here, because nobody's really talking about Kula right now.
Yeah.
This is part of the problem, is there's not a lot of communication about what resources are available, but also you know, FEMA is here. The administrator, the big boss in FEMA, was here, and she went through and walked through Lahaina the other day. But you know what? There are so many resources that are at their fingertips. They are not yet deploying here to deal with the immediate crisis response. And this is a major problem, and something I'm trying to shake the trees on and make a lot of noise about, because it is inexcusable that we are almost 1 week out from the day these fires broke out, and they have not yet deployed those resources to all the communities here on Maui who've been impacted. Not even in West Maui.
Right now, we have, prior to this large fire,
and I'm not going to make any apologies or excuses for that, because there is none. There is no excuse.
If you're a kid growing up here, it's almost impossible to
Yeah, I can understand your frustration because
Well, you guys are living it, though.
yeah,
or you'll just
but
stay in
I've
that
been keeping track about our federal
You're
government.
lucky you have parents
So
that can support you.
It's no wonder.
And so we already
the sweep
had
of
this
the wheel.
housing crisis, and right now, the hotels that are closest.
Your heart is so tied to this place.
It is, you know, I mean, I've spent almost all of my life in Hawaii, represented this community for 8 years while I served in Congress, and to say that my heart breaks sounds too small to convey not only what I'm experiencing, but really more importantly what this community is going through, and to know that the best support that they have gotten so far has come from each other. That's what's so maddening to me, is that I know that the resources are available to meet every single need that the community of Maui has, from here in Kula and upcountry Maui all the way to West Maui and everywhere in between. There are those who are directly impacted, who've lost their homes. There are communities who've been cut off either because of no power, like this community, no water, no to convey, hey, here's the resources that we need. And so they're really relying on each other. I know that this is an overwhelming catastrophe for the county leadership, to deal with. It's a new administration that's just come in. But look, the state and FEMA, they are the ones who have the ability to mobilize the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief resources that the U.S. military has based here in Hawaii and that are commonly deployed to support other countries during their time of need. That is what needs to happen yesterday right here in Maui County. And that's what I'm urging these leaders. I know what they're waiting for, but this should have happened earlier on.
Why do you think it's not happening?
You know, I can't even come up with a plausible excuse because it is inexcusable. These resources have been ready on the military side since this crisis began. They have been ready to launch. They just are federally mandated. They can't move until they get that word from the state or from FEMA. If there are any bureaucratic or funding or whatever other things that are on their minds, they need to put that aside and actually help people right now.
The main, avenue in your line of work that is like, I would kind of like to know why we didn't have water.
Yeah.
That's kind of something that I think people are going to be going like, where was the water?
Yeah.
That was kind of concerning.
Both from the Maui fire, but also why was the water turned off? Is that the
it wasn't turned? It had no pressure. Like my hose was a trickle.
Right.
You're like, oh, fire in your yard. Let's turn on the hose and put out the fire. And then you're like, let's turn on the hose and nothing comes out. And you're going, oh, bummer, because that was my plan, was to put water on the fire.
Yeah.
And then when there's no water, you're kind of left with not much of a plan.
Yeah.
And then the fire trucks show up and you're like, awesome. And then the fire guys are like, we don't have water. You're like, oh,
right.
Strike two.
Yeah.
No helicopter, no water.
Yeah.
I don't have water. So yeah, and I know there's the Leolino fire, Lahaina's burning, Pulehu is burning.
Yeah.
These guys are they're humans like us in a yellow uniform. They're still, at the end of the day, they're still human. I mean, I heard that one of the guys I grew up with who was fighting the fire lost his family home in Lahaina while he's saving my house, and you're like, I'm sorry.
In the midst of so much chaos and death and destruction, it is so awe-inspiring to see how people who have lost everything but the clothes on their back are not in a corner feeling sorry for themselves. They are stepping up and saying, hey, how can I help my neighbor? On this street that we were on, talking with some of the residents here, they were so busy helping someone else evacuate and get out of their home that they didn't realize their own home was being burnt to ash at that very moment. And this is this amazing thing that we are seeing, and frankly, it's why it's so important that those who have means and resources that the community doesn't have really need to step up to the plate and fill that gap, because what's happening right now is beautiful. It will continue, but it's also not sustainable.
We still have people with jobs and bills to pay and kids to raise, and we already have a housing crisis and a cost of living crisis, and like it or not, tourism is still our biggest economy. And if you suddenly have all the tourists go away indefinitely, you're abandoning like the parts of the island that weren't affected.
Yes.
And like we all still have to keep living.
Exactly.
So that's a challenge.
With the added burden of trying to rebuild your lives.
Like I'm supposed to be right now. I fielded, 200 Instagram comments of how can I bring green waste, but I haven't even looked at my work email this morning. Probably should, So anyway, there's that too.
Loud and clear. Pete, there's been a lot of coverage around what has been happening to the community of Lahaina, the communities surrounding Lahaina on West Maui, the devastation and suffering that they have gone through and are continuing to struggle through as we speak, just a few days after this disaster. But where I am now is a different part of the island of Maui, an upcountry community called Kula. This community also experienced the devastation of the brush fires. As you're seeing, there's a couple of homes here on a small rural street that have been completely destroyed. The brush fires ripping through many of these neighborhoods just as they did through Lahaina. It's important to be able to convey the loss that these communities have experienced, a sense of urgency needed for really direct services and response coming from the county, state, and federal government. Not only the crisis right now, but also recognizing the steps that are necessary to be taken for this community as they start to look at what does rebuilding look like.